Degrees report, we probably went further than previous IPCC reports in having psychological material, but it was positive kind of behavioural psychology. And I think there's a question about how do we, I think there's been a bit of a tendency in CPA to feel that we're over here and they're over there. And I'm wondering about how we make sure we connect. And I make that apply to all of us in different ways and how we see those other people as part of the same exploration. Because I think they would probably welcome some help with bridging and ways of that it probably mostly involves us doing work to frame things in ways that they can use.
Yeah. Well, that'd be interesting. Any thoughts on that? Yes.
Not totally on this, no. I mean, a follow-up, because I also have a link came to me. I mentioned that before at the meeting. There are researchers in sociology, they research on social pathologies of contemporary civilizations. So again, they look into climate change, they look into denial, they look at how this could all develop and what we do. Their method is very much, they are looking now to find social anthropology methodologies to put that in, to see how other people treat each other and the world differently. But again, what you just said, the link, to make links, because there are people who do things at different ends and to link with them, so that's just
Well, that's an interesting observation as well, because that's probably one of the methodologies that we didn't feature in the book, which is a more observational methodology. And probably the very best example in the climate change world at the moment is the book by Kari Norgaard, some of you may have come across, which is a study of a Norwegian village. And it was a really interesting study of how climate change was, in a sense, not talked about, in the everyday language of this small Norwegian village, where it was clearly visibly already happening because of the behaviour of glaciers that were surrounding the village. And that was more of a study in the kind of anthropological tradition, using observation, and observation in particular of everyday conversations, and the way in which denial and silence about climate change became part of what Jill, in her contribution, called the kind of warp and weft of everyday conversation. It's not, denial is not so much we carry around inside ourselves. It's something that is embedded in all of our conversations. It's in that sense, it's an interactional phenomenon. But Laurie, the issue you raise, I think, is an important one.
And also the AR6 is now underway.
Yeah. I mean, there have been some attempts. Nadine, who contributes to the book, was working for the IPCC until about 18 months ago, and I think she found that quite tough to get a kind of psychosocial perspective into the way in which the IPCC were thinking in terms of the development of their assessment reports and so on. The conventional model of psychology that is drawn upon is now referred to as behavioural economics. That's what they draw upon. It's Daniel Kahneman and people like that. They draw on neuroscience, developments in neuroscience, and particularly the idea of the emotional the emotional brain, and so it's an advance on the psychological models that used to be used, which were entirely based on what I call Spockism, the idea that we're these logical information processing creatures, and all we need is more information, and if we have more information then the scales will fall from our eyes. Behavioural economics takes it a bit further and says, okay, no, we're not as logical and rational as we thought. We are what's called boundedly rational. So this notion of bounded rationality is crucial to this model that is now used very much by policymakers and by the IPCC.
I would be a bit careful about that, Paul, because I think, so Nadine was in a particular work within a particular bit
Yeah.
of the IPCC which has a scientific attitude. There's the current chairs of Working Group 3, I think, are a lot more, which is the mitigation section, are much more open to this stuff, I think, and I think it's worth working with. And also, I know some of the authors who I think will actually really value.
I think crucially it's how do we begin to engage with this idea that it's bounded rationality is a step forward, but they need to take another step, which is one which really puts the emotion central.
It's not like they're all in one place, and I think that's part of this. Is I think thinking about the people we need to engage as being a kind of monolithic other, I think is part of the challenge, getting beyond that, because actually there are people in all sorts of different mindsets in that community. So how do we engage with the people who might be the bridges into it?
Okay. Any thoughts?
So up in Scotland, Julian may be able to add to this as well. We had the workshop with about 30 folks there, and in Scotland we tend to be quite a cross-discipline lot, and I'm a big fan of crossing disciplines because I know all sorts of other environmentalists were a boring bunch with radio present. But we did have a fantastic workshop where we took the IPCC communication handbook for scientists, so teaching scientists how to be communicators. And we critiqued it positively and negatively and then fed back to the IPCC.
Well, that was done by Climate Outreach for IPCC, wasn't it?
Yeah. So we sort of we made that bridge between them and hopefully adapted how they didn't mention psychology at all in the handbook. And that's a good start, I think. Do you want to add anything, Julian?
No, I think that's fine.
Yeah.
I think there's an issue. I work in a psychosocial studies department without the hyphen, and I think there is an issue about separating out climate change or the climate emergency from other as if it's a topic in itself, from other psychosocial issues. So that you listed, gender, class, race, blah, 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 and then issues around climate change. But I think if we don't encompass those within the climate change conversations and actions, then we're on a loser, because climate change is racialized, climate change is gendered, and I think those bits are getting a bit lost in the sort of desire to do something, of course, about the climate emergency. But all organisations also dealing with that have to bear in mind within their own organisation those issues and how they function within. Otherwise, what are we changing for, or what are we changing towards? And I worry that those bits are getting a bit sort of, those are other topics. They're not. It's all part of the same.
Any other thoughts or questions before we continue on? Okay, well, let's have a clip from Australia. This person won't be able to answer questions because this is just a recorded